Neck-throughs, guitars, they're like a guy that you won't have a beer with you.
I want to hear what's pushing the notes.
Freddie King and B.B. King, Albert King, and let's not forget Burger King.
I don't want to blow my knuckle out.
Stainless steel is the work of the devil.
These go to 11.
From the East Amplification Tone Labs in Baltimore, Maryland, it's the Amps and Axes Show with your hosts, Jeff the Godfather of Low Wattage Amps Bober and Mick Marcelino.
Well, good day to you, Mr. Bober.
Good day to you, Mr. Marcelino.
Oh.
How you doing, man?
Oh,
have you melted yet?
I was in my car the other day, 102. And I was I'm doing 80. And it's 102. I'm like, that's a little crazy. Now, granted, the thermostat. Yeah. Anyway, we don't. That's the automotive podcast. I'll start in a week.
I'm pretty sure that this time of year, the wind chill doesn't count.
It's more like a hairdryer.
Exactly.
Hey, real quick, we had a winner. We had a winner right out of the chute. And I don't have a contest this week. I'll come up with something for next week. I didn't. Look, I'm busy. God damn it, I'm busy.
Everybody's like planning for 4th of July. So,
God, I wish I was planning for 4th of July. But I also wanted to tell you. So we're gonna have a contest next week. Okay.
Awesome.
We'll come out with another one. The answer. I want to give the answer out. The answer was it was a copyright infringement. I had to change the beginning and the end. It was kind of funny because second guy got in. He goes, it was because of Led Zeppelin, right? And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? And I forgot. We ran Moby Dick for the ending, but it was an Airborne song, Bad, Blonde, and Beautiful. The drum intro, and somehow the DRM encryption of the MP3 made its way out to the world. And when this show gets published to YouTube, they actually just, it was gone. They just kill it. They don't care. They just whack it. So we had to change the intro and the outro music to the to the show because of that. And it was a guy named Paul from Abington, Maryland. He got right on it, man. I mean, I published the show. It was not even 20 minutes, and boom, he come right back.
Wow, very nice.
Yeah, so way to go, Paul. I'm not going to give out his last name because, we don't want anybody,
There you go.
Yeah, but he lives in he lives in our home state. Thank God somebody in our home state got it because our numbers here are nowhere near what they are out in California. So we appreciate you LA guys, man.
Absolutely. But hey, Maryland guys, pick it up.
Yeah, what the hell?
Paul, tell your friends, man.
We live here.
Paul, tell your friends you just won something.
Can't we win our own damn state? How bad is that? Right? So, listen, there's one other thing here, and I don't want to get into commercial world, but you guys have got to go to our website, ampsandaxes.com. And on the right-hand side, there's two banners. Look, we trimmed down. We're getting slim for putting on the bikinis and the Speedos, right?
There you go.
So we got our Amazon banner. You guys click through that. That keeps the coal in the train. Train goes down the tracks. We get all these cool interviews. But second, if you're not a subscriber to Audible, you guys are missing out, man, because there's like a gajillion books out there, and you can find some of the coolest things, music, murder, anything you're thinking of, man, and most of them are unabridged, which means that they're reading them verbatim. They're not cutting them because, a lot of audio stuff, right?
No Reader's Digest versions.
Exactly. Here. But the other cool part about it is a lot of the authors, whether they're famous, they're reading their own books, which is pretty damn cool to hear the person that actually wrote the book read it. So go out there and check that out. Now, if you don't want to go to our website, you can just go to audible.com/amps. That's AMPS, because I wasn't going to hit you with the old Axis thing. And you do that, man. you're not paying any extra, and they're kicking it over to us. And that will really keep this thing going. And, you know, that other podcast that I'm on with Mr. Greg Mara, Let's Press Pause, we had to take a break this week because he's in Palm Springs enjoying life.
Well, as well he should be.
Hell yeah, because if it's hot here,
I only have just
hot.
one question about that.
Yes, sir.
Why are we not there?
In Palm Springs?
In Palm Springs.
I don't think he wants us there.
Oh, well, see, that's a good answer.
You know,
good answer.
I mean, there's no offense there. But,
no.
You know, it's like, hey, I talked to this guy.
He time away from everything.
Here's how it works, Jeff. You could go. It'd be cool. If I showed up, he'd be like, I've heard enough of you, asshole.
Didn't we just talk? Get out of here. That's right.
So, listen, we cannot do this show. And I know we say this every week. We cannot do this without you guys. And
right.
we appreciate that, man.
Not without you, friends, not Romans, friends, Americans, no, friends, friends, and worldwide population.
Yeah, I mean,
turn everybody on you. You know,
we're in Rome.
If they live in, you know, I don't care where they are, Rome, and that's fine. Just turn them. Hey, man, it's the internet. You can get it anywhere.
I would love to hear the farthest listener.
Me too.
Yeah, like Antarctica or something like that. Wouldn't that be cool?
Know,
that'd be badass.
You know, cozy up to us in the South Pole. You know, somewhere.
Exactly.
So anyway, tell everybody you know, because you know we need listeners.
Yeah.
So tell your friends.
Yes.
Tell your friends.
And
more listeners.
And when you tell your friends, and we know this for a fact, when you tell your friends, because I searched the internet like you wouldn't believe, you want to tell them that you heard it here first.
Right, because there's a lot of times where we're going to attempt to expose you to somebody, something that you may not have heard of or about before. So, yeah, you know, we try to keep it interesting. So, yeah, tell them you heard it here first, and they got to listen too. Not just listen with you. They got to listen on their own, because that counts like for one more. That's a +1.
Yeah, the internet, they changed it on us. I love that part. But anyway,
there you go. Well, we're gonna bring you somebody that you might or might not have heard of his instruments. But he's a fantastic guitar manufacturer. So we are going to take a pause for the cause. Mick likes a lot of stuff that this particular guy does. So
I'm going to geek out, kids.
There you go. It's geek time. We're going to take a pause for the cause. Come back with our guest of the week, guitar manufacturer extraordinaire, Mr. David Thomas McNaught.
Hey, this is Nigel Dupree from the band Waylon, and you're listening to Amps and Axes.
All right, and we are back as promised with Funny Man of the Week.
Uh-oh.
And guitar builder extraordinaire, Mr. Dave McNaught. Dave, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Thanks for taking the time.
I appreciate you guys having me on.
Jeff, I got this has been one that's been on my list. To get Dave on the show. I stumbled upon Dave's guitars. Oh my God! I guess around when the internet started becoming a thing. Ed Roman.
That's about when I went into business full time.
Well, Ed Roman, he had purchased a bunch of your early on guitars.
Yeah.
And I saw him, and I was like, this is the craziest stuff I've ever seen. And the reason is not because, well, your inlay work, I've never seen anything like that. But the building technique is a term that I've never heard called set through.
Right.
And
right,
that tenon runs all the way down to the stop tail. Okay.
Well, it actually goes past that. It
runs
under. Yeah, it actually runs underneath the stop tail. Basically, when you screw in the bottom strap button, it's hitting it's screwing into the tenon.
Wow. So you're going that far.
Yeah, not that the screwing it in there makes any difference in the sound. I'm just saying that's how far it goes in.
Okay.
Actually, Actually, that is the secret. It's the strap button that's screwing into the.
I knew that.
So that's where the sustain comes from.
It's one of those EJ things where you have to use a brass screw instead of a stainless.
Oh yes, secret's out now.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to be doing it.
So I saw this and I was blown away by this technique, and then I really started like kind of following what he was doing, and then he started. Then you started your own website shortly after that.
Yep.
And you got into like the building techniques and all, and it was like the amount of labor that goes into one of these is it's not normal that you would see out of a guitar manufacturer. Nobody else is doing this. I have studied and searched many a guys that build guitars out of their houses or garages or whatever. And
apparently, I got dropped on my head when I was little because it is a lot of work, but it's a blast. So, it's fun to do. So I guess that makes the amount of work not seem like as much.
I got you. There's a couple photos there of early on. I don't know if they're still on your site where he is just covered in sawdust.
Oh yeah,
because of like how the plume happens sometimes when you're doing things. It'll come up and over top of you. And I was just the biggest thing was the inlay work and the binding, where it's 4 or 5 layer binding, but it's not the stuff that you go and buy from like Stu Mac.
Right.
It's flame maple with ebony with another piece of flame, and then there's the entire New York skyline in 85 different or 800 different pieces of mother of pearl, and then there's a tiger that down to the slit in the eye is visible on this. So we got to get this story, of course, Jeff, but the most amazing stuff I've ever seen out of any guitar manufacturer.
I appreciate that, man.
Wow.
Dude, it is it defies everybody else. That's for sure.
We're gonna do like I always do and take a trip in the Wayback Machine,
okay,
and find out where Mr. David Thomas McNaught was born and raised, and when exactly you did get dropped on your head. So, give us some history, man.
Apparently, the dropping on the head happened around 2 or 3. But no, I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. That's where I was born and raised, and the thing with guitars, it started around 5 or 6. I saw a Kiss poster, and that was it. That was it. Never looked back. Ace Frehley in the poster was holding this Cherry Burst, Les Paul, and that was it. That was it.
Wow. And
then there was a local mall that we would always go to, Tri-County Mall, and that was back when you could like let your kids wander around the mall by yourself. I would always go to the music store there, and they had a Les Paul in the window. Of course, you couldn't touch it. I mean, I would just stand there for hours. I was mesmerized. And that's kind of where it started. And then
now, did you play guitar or start to play guitar at that time, or did your dad or mom or
Not at that time. Well, on both sides of my family, both grandfathers were musicians. On my mom's side, that grandpa played guitar, classical guitar, and on my dad's side, I think he played trumpet. He did big band stuff like that.
Okay.
And so no, I hadn't started playing yet, but I wanted to. And of course, my parents, they were like, "Save up half the money and we'll pay the other half," knowing damn well I couldn't. It's like, man, I'm like 7. What are you talking about? I don't have a job. What do you want me to do? So. My grandpa on my mom's side, I must have been like 10. He gave me as a pawn shop special, but the name of it was a Kappa King. I'd never heard of it, never seen one since. But he gave it to me, and that's kind of how I got started playing guitar. At first you're just kind of beating around on it, making noise, and it was shortly after that, I wanted another guitar, and parents said the same thing: save up half the money. And my grandfather on my dad's side, he was a woodworker, and so it just made sense. I was like, I'll build one, So that's honestly, it started as simple as that. And
you were how old?
I started building and playing around 10.
Wow.
Yeah, I actually read that on Roman's site. And then I actually, I was a little nuts, you know, like I would do some weird things back in the day. Like I just needed to know. So I called him up one day and he was annoyed as usual, right?
Yeah.
'Cause it was Ed, you know, and, you know, God rest his soul. It was Ed. Ed was Ed. You know, you could never get him to smile.
No. Actually, I did. Before the relationship went south, and it went way south.
Yeah.
Before it went south, we went to a NAMM show together.
Really?
And I got to be honest, when you would get him away from the computer and out of selling mode.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, man, he was. It's scary to say this because I know people are going to be listening, but he was a nice guy. He really was.
Wow.
We had an absolute blast. But then as soon as he went back into sales mode, it's like he just couldn't.
Yeah.
He just couldn't help himself, and he would just turn. He would just he like you said, Ed was Ed,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't long after that. We probably only had about 9 months of good times.
Mm-hmm.
After that, man, it went south, and it went south quick. But
oh yeah, I mean, I read the you know where he kind of.
Oh, you don't know the half of it.
Where he slammed you on his website. I mean, that was one guy that never pulled a punch, man. If he had a thought in his head, it usually went down and went out to the interweb, and
man,
you know,
it was a lawsuit that lasted 10 years. Over 10 years.
Christ.
We're in the deep water now, so we might as well keep going.
Sure.
Now he threatened to kill me, my wife, my kids, the guy who worked with me, his wife. I mean, it was serious. It was for real. And you know, we weren't concerned with Ed himself coming to the shop, but you know, by this time he was in Vegas,
and he had a lot of money and a lot of people.
So we were sitting there thinking, man, I doubt he's going to like hire a professional, but he could probably hire some, you know. Somebody who doesn't have anything to lose, pay him $5 or $10 grand and come here and, you know, like try to scare us or whatever.
Yeah.
So of course the guy who worked with me at the time and did all the paint work, his name's Dave Mansell. We took it serious. So man, we armed ourselves to the hilt. I mean, guns, knives, sticks. I mean, the shop was booby trapped. Anyone who should not be there, we protected ourselves. Put it this way: had anybody came to the shop, they would have been in for more of a surprise than we ever would have been. I mean, we were in all those photos, those early photos in the shop. Yeah. I got a gun in my back, you know, in my back belt, and every single one. It was no joke. Now, you know, is that over the top? It's you know the old saying: I'd rather have my gun and not need it than need my gun and not have it. So we, you know. Yeah. And that lasted for 10 years or whatever.
That's crazy.
Wow.
I mean,
what did you do? Mess up the binding on a guitar? Well,
yeah.
That's just crazy.
Messed up the binding. No, it was just it. He felt like he had been wronged, and he was gonna, he was gonna make my life hell. And I mean, wow. he did, and it's crazy too, because like even in we had to do some videotape depositions and stuff. And just the stuff that was coming out of his mouth, I mean, he was sitting there. We could go on forever about that. It was just crazy. It was a long 10 years, long 10 years. I mean, it sucked.
Wow. And ultimately, you could tell that the guy, because he was, whenever you would talk to him on the phone, I had to deal with him a couple times because I bought some Carina from him.
Yep.
And every time you talk to him on the phone, you were like, I just got this feeling like this guy's going to drop dead one day. And sure enough, he died of a heart attack.
Yep.
And it was just because he could not get out of that, like you said, when he wasn't on the computer or behind the desk, it was, you had a different person, but he was behind that desk a lot. I mean, you talk about a place that was dealing in a lot of volume, especially when he went out to Vegas.
Yeah.
You had to make an appointment just to go look at guitars because the place was so big. You had to get in a golf cart or something, right?
Yeah. A couple guys who did some work for him and, who were actually there in the shop. Some of the stories, too, as far as the volume, I mean, they would say like it would be nothing on a Saturday for them to do $50,000 or $60,000, $70,000 in sales, and I'm like, how?
All over the world, man.
How?
Yeah.
But
and he always had rare shit too, man. Like he would have stuff that nobody had, like the Miller Lite Washburn guitar, something really crazy that they made like 5 of, but somehow he would obtain it, and I just remember hearing his voice and just going, man, this guy is just, you could just tell sometimes, Jeff, you talk to some guys and it's like, they can't let it go. Like, no, he's one of those guys, or he was one of those guys, I should say. Yeah. But I know we shouldn't bash on the dead guy, but
no, and to be honest, I mean, let's say, out of all the horrible things that he did and said, to everybody, or whatever, even with me, I did learn a few things from him. I mean, there were, when I first, sent him the first guitar, I mean, he goes, you build a nice guitar. He said, but there's nothing different here. And of course, I'm a young kid. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, anybody can do this. He goes, you got to do something different to stand out. And if it wasn't for him, there's certain things that I do now that I don't think I would have had that mentality of, okay, if the industry is going to zig, I need to zag. I would have zigged with the industry. I just would have kind of followed along. So, that's where, some of the things that I do, whether it be colors or headstock shapes or, just even, just not being, super active on forums and stuff like that. Not because trying to, not being like stuck up or anything. It's just like, well, I'm going to kind of, maybe be a little bit mysterious. If everybody's being so out there, I'll kind of pull back a little bit. You know what I mean? I mean, it makes sense to, to do something different.
I know exactly what you mean. I never got involved in the forums.
They're cool until you upset somebody.
Right.
Yeah. And undoubtedly, you're gonna upset somebody, even if you're joking. You're gonna upset somebody.
And we do, and we get the comments every now and then, and it's best to just not reply.
Yeah.
Because there was an episode one time that all of our shows publish out to YouTube. Okay,
right.
So you can go to our YouTube channel and listen to the show. I mean, it's not a video; it's just a screenshot of our logo.
Right.
And this one guy, he started off, and by the time he finished, he was calling me and Jeff racist.
Oh yeah.
And he said that we didn't give. What was his name? Jeff from 24/7 Spies. Jimmy
Hazel.
Jimmy Hazel, yes. And he said that we did not give him a fair shake to tell his story. And I was like, we gave him 2 full 1.5 hour episodes almost back to back, because that's how long the interview was. And Jimmy couldn't have been more open and honest and just true dialogue and just the funniest guy, one of the funniest guys we've ever chatted with. And I'm like, this guy did not, so I just left it. And then I had to turn off the comments because this guy just could not let it go. He just kept coming back, and just coming back.
What was weird for me and with the forums in the beginning, because of my association with Ed in the beginning, and again, I was when I sent Ed that first guitar, I didn't even have a computer. So I didn't know his reputation or anything like that. I knew nothing about forums. I knew nothing about, the guitar buying community as far as how quick word would spread. And I remember in the beginning, somebody would, mention my name on a forum, and it would just be what seemed like it. I'm probably being dramatic because it was my, my feelings and emotions, but it just seems like I was just sitting there getting hammered. Oh, this guy sucks. He's just one of Ed's boys. And I'm sitting there thinking, no, I'm an actual company, man. And I've been doing this for 30 years already. And I put my heart and soul in this. What do you mean I suck? Well, and man, that kind of went on for years. And then finally I was just like, it's not like I was like, screw the forums, but for my sanity, I was like, I can't keep paying attention to that. I need to just build guitars. And,
most of those guys were PRS guys because he pissed off that whole community like nobody's business, man.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, my God. The stuff he used to say about PRS, Jeff, you would think he's got to be in court with Paul Reed on just slander charges alone, you know, because he would say things that he had no proof to back up. I mean, and I know this is kind of weird that we're talking about Roman.
Yeah, no.
It is, because this is David's show.
Exactly.
I want to get back to David.
That is a big part of the history. I mean, I know not a lot of people know that, you know, there were death threats in a lawsuit that lasted 10 years, but I mean, it's, you know, it is part of the history, you know.
I'm sure.
So it's safe to say there is no affiliation with Ed Roman Guitars.
No. Right.
One iota.
Honestly, all there was he was hired as when I met him and he ordered a guitar, we sat down and talked, and we came up with this plan. He was going to be my national sales manager, and that's what it was supposed to be. It never became that. He just pretty much just kept ordering guitars. I mean, he wasn't new to the game. I was. You know, so he knew, here's this young, dumb, not knowing anything about business kid. I'll tell him everything he wants to hear and just keep ordering guitars and keep him swamped. And, you know, I'll keep the guitars for myself. And what I mean for myself is never set up the dealer network. And, you know, what's he going to do? And that's when, you know, there was a point where I was like, well, I want dealers. And he pretty much at one point said no. I'm like, what do you mean no? That's what I hired you for. And so at the point that I fired him, that's when, you know, the lawsuit started, and it was like,
wow. So he wanted exclusive.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But again, you know, you live and you learn, and you know.
There you go. Yeah, man.
And
well, I want to find out how much you learned starting at 10 years old wanting to build a guitar, because I know me at 10, I was more than likely taking things apart, but probably not really proficient at putting them back together, you know, and building, like for me, it would be building electronics. Yeah, that was probably still a few years off. So
honestly, first of all, I was a destructive kid, extremely destructive. Now, well, put it this way, that's what my parents called it. Mm-hmm. I called it, I was just curious. So if I had a toy or if I had anything, and there was an inside to it, I wanted to see what was inside. Well, how'd you do that? You broke it apart. You know, then you figure out how so I had that going, and just, you know, there's something about a guitar, and everybody who's into guitar knows it. You can't even put it into words. You can do your best to try to describe it, but there's just something mesmerizing. There's something magical about a guitar, to where you can just sit there and you can stare at it, and you can stare at it for hours. And so those two things just kind of, you know, they just drove me to just start building guitars and, you know, keep doing it. And, you know, I was kind of a loner as a kid, you know, so put me in, and even still now, man, put me in a shop, lock the door, turn the music up, I'm at home. You know, that's what I prefer to be doing. And if I'm not doing them, I'm fucking them. So, you know.
Well, you know what it is? I think George Fullerton really, you know, he captured it because, you know, he said it was like a woman, right? Jeff, isn't that right? Isn't that correct? Isn't that what he said? Wasn't it George or was it Leo? I can't remember. But it was like, you know, the body of the Strat was just so enticing because of the curves. Right.
And there's just, and then you throw in the rock star aspect, and, you know, guys like Jimi Hendrix and Eddie Van Halen and Randy Rhoads, and just, it really is magic. That's the best way that I can describe it, you know, and that even fails to really describe, but it's something that you just, it definitely, you know, if you catch the bug, you got it, and you know it, and, you know, that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, so, I guess a violin, it sounds like a violin, and no matter how hard the guy tries to do different things on the violin, right?
Right.
But, you know, your electric guitar, there's guys out there that do things that you just kind of go, oh my God.
Like, especially now.
Like, where did that guy come from?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like everybody's great. Like, everybody on
except
YouTube
for me.
is great, you know.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing how early. Well, you started building guitars very early, but it's amazing how many more people, you know, get very accomplished very quickly.
Yeah.
Nowadays,
there's so much information out there. I mean, you know, imagine being a guitar player. Say you're, you know, I don't know, 10, 15 years old, and it's in the 1960s, and you want to start learning to play guitar. What are you going to do? The only thing you could do is, you know, slow the record, you know, down and do your best to play by ear. Whereas now there's just so much information I mean, you can take a lesson with Paul Gilbert online. What the hell?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, it used to be you had to slow the record down. You know, if you were good enough to even decipher a piece of sheet music if one existed, you know, you could try like that, or you could see what you could see on television. And if you didn't catch it the first time, you're gonna have to wait for a rerun.
Exactly.
Because there wasn't even a VCR. Nothing. It was tough. It was tough. Listen to the radio all the time and try to emulate it, Yeah,
but there's a wealth of information now. I mean, there's
oh my God,
there's tab, there's lessons, there's things like slow gold that you can slow it down, but it doesn't change the pitch. It's just like, man, would have loved to have had that stuff when I was coming up.
Yeah. So did you ever start like playing with people, playing in a band, and did you ever like play your own stuff out for your own guitars first?
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, the guitar, building guitars, when I first started doing it, I was building guitars for myself because I was going to be a rock star. I mean, I just knew it. I would tell you, I remember like in 5th or 6th grade, when they have like career day and everyone, they're going around the room asking people what they want to do. And, people saying, doctor, lawyer, this, that, the other. And my dumb ass is like, I'm going to be a rock star. And, everybody in the room is sort of like, what? But,
that's very nice, Dave. Do we need geologists?
Exactly. But that's what I was going to do. And then, I was in, I guess probably around 14 or 15, started getting in different bands, playing out and stuff. And it didn't take long before, again, mentioning earlier, I'm kind of a loner. It didn't take long before I was like, I like being in bands and I like playing out, but I didn't like relying on other people. Like if somebody didn't learn the song, okay, now we can't play that song, or if somebody, what I mean? So I was just like, you know what? I kind of just want to do my own thing. So for a while, I thought I was going to, kind of, do like instrumental stuff by myself. And then just at one point, I guess early 20s, I was like, I think I kind of like building guitars, not necessarily better than playing guitars, but I think that's what I want to do for a living. And my wife actually gave me a loan. And that's kind of how it got started.
Was she your wife at that point?
I think if she wasn't, then we already had plans to be.
Okay.
It was funny. I was a bartender again, talking about being, kind of a loner and shy and all that. I decided, you know what? I'm tired of, using shyness as a crutch. I'm going to go be a bartender. That'll teach me how to talk to people and stuff like that. So I literally, I knew a guy who knew a guy, and he got me a job as a bartender. And man, dude, I didn't even know what was in a gin and tonic, and that's no joke. And they threw. I'm not kidding.
That's a tough one, man. That's a tough one.
I got thrown back there on a Friday night. And,
God.
Yeah. Oh, it was horrific. But I learned how to do it. And anyway, my wife, she actually was my boss, and that's kind of how we met. But no, we were we were sitting there talking one time. I wasn't bartending at that time because I really didn't like bartending. It was fun for a while, but then it was kind of like And she said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" I mean, obviously she's kind of busting my balls. I'm like, I don't know. I kind of would like to build guitars. She's like, well, if I give you $1,000, can you get started with that? I'm like, I think so. And honestly, that's how it started. She gave me $1,000 and, I started buying some stuff,
Wow.
And shortly after that, I went ahead and, we, decided we were going to do it as a full-time business. And I went and got a business loan and stuff like that. But, it initially started off as a $1,000 loan to grow up and be a big boy and get a job.
Wow. Now, do you remember what style the first guitar was? Was it like T style or Les Paul style?
It was very much patterned after Jackson, like a Jackson soloist.
Oh, okay.
I guess because PRS kind of got the whole boutique guitar thing, with quilt tops and stuff like that, kind of got that started. But when I first started building guitars and stuff, Jackson, for me, that was like that same thing. It was just so cool when you had Randy Rhoads and, you just had all the coolest guitar players playing Jackson guitars. So that was more kind of, my style of, building guitars was Jackson type stuff. And then, of course, PRS comes along and there's, quilt tops and carved tops and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it was a soloist type shape.
Cool. Do you know where it is? Do you have it? Do you know who has it?
I actually do have. I'm sitting here. Look, I'm actually in my office right now. I have the body. I don't know. Oh, it's right here. Yeah, there's actually stuff stacked on it. Yeah, I do have the body. I have no idea where the neck is. I have no idea where the neck, because I was doing bolt-ons back then. I have no idea where the neck is, but yeah, I still got the first body. It's horrible. It's absolutely it's the worst piece of crap you've ever seen in your life. It's horrible. I went to put a Floyd on it because initially I put a flat mount on it because that's all I had at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I went to put a Floyd on it, and I didn't have a router bit that was long enough to route all the way through. So I chiseled it's rough. I just took a chisel and just started chiseling away wood till I got through to the back. It's horrible.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now I know a little bit of the story, but I guess the biggest form of flattery is when one of the big guitar companies comes after you because you had to change the headstock on your Phoenix Rising guitar, right?
You do know some history, don't you, man?
Yeah, man. Because see, it had a more exaggerated. I mean, it didn't look anything, but it.
Well, it was honestly, it was one of those things where if you were to not see the two of them side by side and just describe them verbally, you
would say, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, it's the same thing. But to see them both side by side, it was kind of like, oh man, are you serious?
Well, it was sort of like his single cut to the Les Paul.
Yeah, exactly. And you know.
And I thought, wow, when I saw that headstock, I was like, man, that's pretty cool because you took it to like this other level. He did like, it was like a Nike swoop, Jeff, for the top of the headstock. And it kind of little bit, very little.
It was a lot narrower.
Yes.
Are we allowed to say the name of the company?
Yeah. You can say whatever.
It was PRS.
I imagine it was Paul.
Theirs is a lot wider, and the top horn of their headstock didn't go up as much. Mine was a lot narrower and a lot more exaggerated. But it was one of those things where, they sent me a cease and desist for doing dragon inlays, and I'm like, I've never done a dragon inlay.
Wow.
It's right.
They were wanting to sue me for damages and all that. I'm like, I've never done a dragon inlay. And of course, again, this is early on, and I'm sitting there kind of freaking out. I'm like, I'm getting, cease and desist from PRS Guitars. What the hell? They also had a problem with the lower horn on the Phoenix. They said it was just like theirs. and I was just kind of like, this is ridiculous. But I do think a lot of that probably had to do with that early association with Ed. Where they probably thought, we're going to find out if this guy is just a name or if he's a real company. And, and that was like the second or third cease and desist I had got from a company. So by this time I knew, I didn't, like the first time I got a cease and desist from another company, first thing I did, run out and get a lawyer and, that dumb shit. And then by this time, I called up their lawyer by myself and kept him on the phone for about 3 or 4 hours, knowing that they're paying for that. Dude, we talked about golf, we talked about cars, we talked about everything other than guitars. Because I thought, man, if you guys are going to be so silly as to, I'm one dude, man. This is ridiculous. Yeah. So I did my best to run that bill up. Not to, I guess to be a prick. I don't know.
Man, that is such a genius idea. And, if I had a redo on what we got, that would have been a great thing to do. Wow.
Yeah.
Lawyers are expensive. I mean, when I very first started, I got sued by, and I'm not going to mention this guy's name, just because same thing. He's just one guy. Mm-hmm. But I got a cease and I didn't get sued. I got a cease and desist. And same thing. I went and got a lawyer, all fired up, and the lawyer looked at the information and he point blank said, he said, here's the deal. He said, you've shown me enough guitars that are more like his than yours. He said, so we can win this. No problem. He goes, I guarantee you that. He said, but it's going to take about 2.5 to 3 years in court, and it's going to cost you in excess of $75,000 just to be right. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and that was my introduction to this business. I was like, huh? And he's like, so do you want to just come up with another shape? Do you think you can do that? I'm like, yeah, I'll come up with another shape. And that's where we came up with the Phoenix.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's stuff. It's just it's just wrong at times. It's why do you have to go and do that to, a small builder? Do you really feel that threatened? Is it really so exact that you think he's copying you? And
well, also too, there is I think sometimes from a legal point of view, if you've got intellectual property that you've got patented or you've got trademarks on, and you are not out there, kind of policing what other people are doing, then it's kind of like, well, we wasted our money, So I mean, I can kind of understand it, but again, after being in it for as long as I have, it's just kind of, and also too now with social media and everything is, there's so much stuff being copied now. There's no way anyone can really keep up with it. So that has kind of died down a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I can understand.
No, I can too. But it's like, if it's one thing if you have intellectual property and you have paid lawyers, to do the proper drawings, and you have filed, your patents or trademarks or whatever, and some large company comes along and starts knocking this stuff off by the hundreds, and it's like, case closed, man. You go after them. Absolutely. You get everything you can. But one guy that, kind of makes a couple of guitars that kind of maybe just look a little, and nobody's going to mistake them for yours.
Right. Exactly.
It's like, and they're not small. They're not cheap guitars. They're high end. You're not going to have a ton of guys that are going to be out on stages with them because they're high end guitars.
And I am not knocking that one particular person in particular, because I've experienced something similar, and it's like you're going after small potatoes, man.
Right.
Yeah. Well, why are you?
And a lot of times with stuff like that, before you get a lawyer, there and I mean I don't know how much people do this anymore, but if I saw somebody ripping off something of mine, or I thought they were ripping, I would just call them myself and say, look, man, I'm not trying to be a dick, but I feel like, that this is a little too close. You think maybe we can work something out? And if he was like, if he wanted to be cool about it, fine. And if not, and and then all I'd do is I'd contact my lawyer and say, what do you think? You think it's worth it? And if he said, nah, man, this is just one, it's a small guy, don't worry about it, then I probably wouldn't worry about it. It's
right,
and that's the way it should be, man. I mean,
right. I mean, well, you have common sense, which
there's guitars to build.
So common.
I mean, honestly, there's guitars to build, there's bills to be paid,
right?
And there is that point where it's just kind of like, do I really want to go down this rabbit hole? Because once you go down that, man, and you get started down that road, it becomes expensive. I mean,
you just lose money. Yeah,
and it's just another distracting road that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't have time for that. Let's get something done. Let's do something tangible and beautiful and make people happy. And
exactly.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, good God, Jeff. I mean, your story was, basically you had the dual stage 30, and then you're getting sued for,
we got desist.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. And you're getting that for because you used a screwdriver that somebody got a patent on, and you're like going, how the hell did you get a patent on a screwdriver? You know what I mean? But know, because.
Did you ever see that episode of King of Queens where the guy, Arthur comes up with instead of it being a Phillips or a slotted screwdriver, he wants to do it with like the letter A, and they called it an A-hole screwdriver.
I like that.
That's great.
So the legal thing is, I said, I understand it, and especially as and you know as well as I do, like say with the PRS thing. I guarantee you, Paul himself probably knew nothing about that. That's probably more from the the guys,
legal side.
Yeah, the legal side. They're just trying to do their job, and there's nothing wrong with that. It sucked at the time, but looking back on it, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, you learn from it, you move on. That's what you have to do.
And I mean, I got to be honest. Because of stuff like that, we had to, the original headstock that they wanted, me to stop there, that they had an issue with. I just said, you know what, man, I'll come up with something else. And from that came up with the puzzle piece headstock. So, I mean, it's one of those things. I felt like I got backed in a corner. That motivated me to come up with something cool.
And it's cool.
I really like the puzzle piece headstock. So, and I like the puzzle piece headstock better than the first one that they didn't, that they had a problem with. So, thank you.
Right. Absolutely. Make lemonade, man. Make
exactly.
lemonade.
And when you go to his webpage, you can see the different headstocks that you can choose.
Right.
And that's one of them, of course. And, that's just crazy detail within itself. I mean, Jeff, I have to send this to you, buddy. I didn't get this over to you, but that headstock has, how many hours go into that? I mean, obviously, just the finishing on that circle has to be.
Well, I mean,
how do you sand that smooth? How do you do that?
Well, it's a 5/8 circle. So I've got a 1/2-inch spindle on the spindle sander, and you kind of pop it down on there. The trick is to sand it and not kind of egg shape the circle. You got to sand it even, and of course because inside of a circle there's going to be side grain and end grain. Well, the end grain always likes to burn more than the side grain. So as you're trying to sand out the burn, you got to make sure that then you sand the sides equally. Otherwise, your circle just became an egg, and it no longer looks the same.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. and I dabbled in the building thing very shortly, a very short period. I did 6 guitars, and I found out how allergic I was to some exotic woods. Real bad stuff. Oh yeah. I've got allergies, and it's just not me.
Right.
Especially sanding. When it started getting fine and it started getting into my lungs, even with a respirator, I was like, this is not fun for me.
Right.
This is bad,
Yeah.
And some of those woods are very toxic. I mean,
oh yeah.
Because they have to deal with beetles that are the size of your hand. Right. I mean, literally, there's, the bugs in Africa can get very large, and the oils that these trees produce to survive is some nasty shit. I mean, and if you get it airborne and it gets in your lungs like sumac, it could kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Coca-Cola is one that's that's one that really gets me.
Really?
Yeah, you can. When I got and I think I have one more on order, and I'm not doing them anymore. Not because of how much it bothers me. Just it's got to acclimate, and it's got to be at the shop for like a year or so before I can even use it because of all the oils and know. But Coca-Cola is rough when you start sawing that and sanding that, and that's rough.
So there's a little story about that because Paduke is one of those woods. Your lungs can inflame and you can basically die from it, right?
Right.
So Washburn was making the Nuno Betancourt guitars out of Paduke, the bodies.
Right.
So they have a Korean line or Indonesian line, and they send a bunch of this wood over there. And they don't have the OSHA laws like we do. Right. So these guys weren't wearing masks, and they subsequently had a couple workers. I don't know if they passed away or if they got deathly ill, but all of a sudden it was now Paduke stain.
Yeah.
It wasn't Paduke anymore because, they were like, whoa, we're losing a couple employees here. We gotta figure out a new way to do this.
Exactly.
Right. So I want to get back to the, the guitar building itself and the features of it. It's like, when did you come up with the
set through
the set through? I was going to say I guess that's the tenon, right?
Yeah.
So when did you come up with when did you come up with that? And are there other things that you wound up doing differently just because you wanted to, or because you saw a need for? Or?
Well, honestly, the set through neck, that was when I was growing up playing guitar, building guitars, in bands and everything. I'd play my guitars, but again, still being a guitar fan, had Hamers, Jacksons, Les Pauls, and no matter what guitar I had, I was always turning my amp up. And anybody who was ever in a band with me was like, "Man, turn down." Like I wanted to hear more out of the guitar. And that's kind of where I came up with the set through neck, and where because it just sitting there, thinking, how can I get a guitar louder? And it just that started doing drawings. I was like, I'll try this. And the first time I built one that way and plugged it in instantly, because all guitar players, we have that sound in our head that we're trying to get, and it's either the sound of your favorite album or it's a sound you have all on your own. And I definitely had a sound in my head. I wanted the guitar itself to be louder. I didn't want to have to keep turning my amp up and making the amp labor. And the first, one I did, as soon as I, plugged it in, hit that A chord, I knew right away. I'm like, this is it. There's something to this. I don't want to interrupt, but most guys, most lay people would go, okay, pickups. Let's I did
put hotter pickups in.
I went through all that, but I kept thinking, just kept thinking, everybody's doing it this way, so there's got to be something else to make the guitar itself, and to make almost like a boost for the pickups, a boost for the bridge, and so to me it made sense. Well, if the neck is running underneath all that, and there's got to be tone transfer from the frets to the fingerboard, down through the neck, up underneath. And, I mean, at first it was just a theory. And then, when I did the first one, and then, but even with that, there were little things like, I never was into hammering in the frets or just pressing in the frets. It just made sense to glue them in. And same thing, just trying different glues, different methods of gluing them in, different times of letting each fret dry before you go to put the next one in. And same thing, that makes a big difference as far as sustain. Because let's face it, where's the note being produced at? It's being produced at the fret. The fret. That's so just initially early on, I would just press them in. But wood is it's not spongy, but it has some give to it. So no matter how hard you press it in, when you let off, a certain amount of that's going to come back out. So it's in my mind is like there's just not enough. There needs to be that contact between the fret and the fingerboard. That's got to be perfect. It almost needs to be like one. So it just made sense to glue it in. Of course, from a money point of view or a time point of view, it's not the smartest thing. I mean, it takes. I'll normally do 2 at a time because while one's drying, I'm working on the other one and vice versa. So it takes about 5.5 hours to put in 24 frets.
Oh my Lord!
Wow. So you would sit there and think, well, that's not the smartest thing to do as far as money. And it's one of those places where it's like, no, but it is the smartest thing to do as far as getting that tone transfer from the fret to the fingerboard to the wood to the pickups to the bridge to the amp and to your ear.
Okay, so now I have a question.
Okay,
so a standard Jescar fret or a Dunlop fret or any of the other companies that are out there, they have barbs on the tang. Do you remove those?
No.
Okay, so you're using.
So you press and glue.
I press and glue.
Okay.
And same thing. I've even experimented around with different size burrs as your, because the saw blade that cuts the fret slots, I think it's .022 or .22.
Yeah.
But the problem with you have to widen it a little bit because if you leave it that width,
it'll backbow, right?
Yeah. So you got to widen it. So that's another thing that I experimented around with is how wide. So am I using a number 7 or number 8 or number 9 burr? And and of course it's different for each fret. So then you got to figure that out. So if I'm going to use a 6105 fret, what burr am I going to use? If I'm going to use a 6100 fret, what burr am I going to, because the tangs are all different widths.
And who's your company for your frets? Who do you use?
I use Jescar.
Jescar's a great company.
Yep.
I mean, they don't. You can get funk on them, and they still hang. They're just so you know, Jeff. The frets that are on your Les Paul that we traded, that is Jescar frets. So they're harder than a Dunlop fret, but they're not as hard as stainless.
Right.
That's what Phil told me when I had him take them down.
Yeah, you got to. Yeah. Well, I put railroad tracks on there for him. But yeah, that is a good company. They really they're really persistent too. I heard you get one batch to the next batch, you don't see any differences in their stuff.
Yeah.
Consistent.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you had mentioned the talking about tone that most people would think put in pickups and stuff like that. Because when I first started doing videos, one of the things that I wanted people to hear right away was how long the notes would sustain. And it's funny because all the people would be asking, what amp, what pickups, what this, what that. Instead of thinking, it's not that. It's the set 2 neck, and it's the way I put in frets. and that's what it is. But I mean, I guess that's been marketed to people. I mean, if you think about, when DiMarzio first started and Seymour Duncan first started, they started out of a necessity for better pickups. So that it's always been kind of marketed that way, like, the aftermarket accessories that'll make your guitar better. And I kind of saw it the other way, like, no, let's make the guitar construction better to where pretty much whatever you put in it sounds good. Now, if you want to, put in really expensive pickups or, your favorite type of pickup, that's going to, work well too. But,
Now, do you step route the pickup holes, right? You step route them and set the pickups on there, or do you not do that? To. Okay. I
used to. All my guitars, like, and it's kind of sad. I build guitars and have been since, I was 10. I'm 47. How many guitars I personally own? One. I got one.
Wow.
That's funny.
But I used to do that step route. The issue with that is that guys like to swap out pickups, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Gotcha.
So what would happen is they would go to swap out a pickup,
and the
new one wouldn't fit because the chassis of the pickup would be, and of course then they call me and they want to send it back to me to be rerouted. And again, I had no problem with it, but then it gets to be this thing where it's like, okay, I'm just sitting around routing guitars, rerouting guitars, and of course they don't want to pay for it, and I understand that, so it just became a thing where it's just like, okay, I'm not gonna do that type of direct mount anymore. So now somebody wants direct mount pickups. I do it where you've got the threaded brass insert that screws into the bottom of the pickup route.
Yeah.
And then the I guess the holes of the chassis, they're drilled out a little bit bigger, and then the spring is up underneath the foot of the chassis itself. And that in my opinion is better than it being fully spring mounted. But again, same thing. Some people, you get used to the sound of a spring mounted pickup. That's what you want to hear. And so, and also too,
it changes the tone, man. I mean,
it completely changes it. But it's weird. All of us guitar players, we're all the same. So this isn't criticizing anybody, but we all say we want this and want that. And we all kind of end up doing the same thing. You know what I mean?
Well, we can all blame Eddie Van Halen for that, because I remember when I started, a friend of mine was like, hey, man, I want them mounted to the body. And I was like, okay. So I had to go on the sites, and I had to figure out exactly how to make these templates, because the way it went, Jeff, is that the front and the back of the pickup actually sat. Now, when I say front and back, I mean the part facing to the bridge and the part facing towards the neck. There was these little shelves that actually sat on, and then you went deeper for the tangs, and then screwed those things to the
tangs
wood.
Into the body,
right?
But you can't adjust height at that point.
Oh no! So it was you got the action where you were, and then that was it, right? It's a one-time shot.
Right.
And here was the thing, though. I would buy the pickup on the knowledge of what I heard from other artists, like, say, I wanted to get a Tone Zone, which is Paul Gilbert's pickup, right?
Right.
It's a hotter PAF, and it's a little bit more clarity. Right. And I'd get it, and I'd do that, and I'd go, what the hell happened? Because the transfer, now the whole pickup is ringing actually with the body, and everybody goes, well, that's cool. And it's like, do you know what that does? That actually changes the entire principle of how that thing was designed. See, because Larry DiMarzio, or Steve Blucher, right? Is that his name?
Yep.
He will tell you, we use two guitars. We use a Fender Strat, and we use, unless it's a Tele pickup, of course. And he goes, we use a Les Paul. And that's it. They don't have the Flying V. They don't have this. They don't have that. So they're humbuckers. They just slap it in probably a 72 custom, and they build their tone.
And it's in a ring. Yeah. It's in a pickup ring.
It's in a big pickup ring. It's a mahogany top. Maple top, mahogany back. It could be, and there's 1,000 guitars out there not made that way at all.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's how they base it off of. So then you take that, and they have that tone.
You got to have some kind of reference point for everything that you do. There has to be one constant.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Exactly. So then you take that, and then you mount it to this piece of Paduke, right? And you're going, well, that doesn't sound like that at all. All of a sudden, the guitar got brighter,
Yeah. Well, that's, what's crazy about guitar, as far as tone, is any little thing you do even using one brand of glue versus another brand of glue to glue in your frets, it changes. Anything you do changes everything. So it's same thing with the set through neck. The first thing I noticed was, okay, this guitar is more present. So I had to change my amp settings. So I had to tone it down. Same when you direct mount the pickups. Okay, all of a sudden you've got more brightness, you've got more clarity. There's more. The guitar is more in your face. So now you can tone it down and make the amp doesn't have to work so hard. So there would be a lot of people they'd first get our guitars, and say, well, it's a little too harsh. Adjust your amp. Yeah. There's something wrong with the guitar. No, I'm telling you, adjust your amp. It's the same as if you give Axl Rose a mic and you give someone who sings more softer, more falsetto, you give them the same mic.
Oh yeah, you get two different things. Yeah,
you got two totally different voices. You've got to adjust it for the singer. And same thing, a guitar is the same thing. It's a voice. And you have to adjust your settings. You can't just set your amp to one setting and then think every guitar is going to sound the same through that amp. They're all different, Yeah,
absolutely. And if it's a good amp, they should be. You should be able to tell one guitar from another when you plug it in.
Like I said, even if you built two, even if the same guitar builder built two guitars out of the same slabs of wood, they're going to be different because the chemical structure and the cellular structure of the wood from one piece to another is different. From one section of wood to another section of the same board.
Yeah, it depends if it's like lower or higher in the tree.
Yeah. And there's some pieces, there's some guitars that you wire up and you're just like, okay, this guitar has that, it's got that thing that, the other ones don't, vice versa.
That's so cool. I tell you, I got to lose my mind talking about this, Jeff. You know that.
Yeah. I was just going to ask finishes. What do you?
That's the other Dave, right?
Well, it was. Let's see that there's a history there, not a good history. Dave started painting for me actually, I initially hired him to do inlays because early on with Ed there was a ton of inlays, and it was for me. It was hard to sit there cutting inlays, knowing that I needed to be carving a neck or carving a body or painting something. So that's kind of what I hired Dave for. Dave's an artistic guy. He could draw. He had done tattoos. So I figured, well, inlays that'll be great for him. So I started showing him how to do it, and it's not that he couldn't do it. It was taking a long time, and so I was like, well, why don't I show you how to paint too? Maybe you can do both. And he kind of liked that better, and that's kind of how that started. So I showed him how to paint, and he was with me from, I guess, 1999 until the economy took a dump in 2009. And then, I had to lay him off, which sucked because, we were friends. We were in a band together years ago. And so when I laid him off in 2009, and it's weird because we live right across the street from each other. And we didn't talk from 2009 until about, 2000 I think he came back in like 2015. Yeah, it was weird. He stopped by the shop one day, and I guess whatever he was doing at the time, he didn't want to be doing anymore. And he said, you need any help? I said, sure. And so he came back from 2015 until, I guess about November of 2017. And he came in one day, and it was the stress of it was more than he wanted to deal with. And it's not that painting is stressful, but it's relative. It's not stressful to me, but that's because I know part of learning to paint is learning what not to do. And you learn that when you teach yourself. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I know how to paint. I also know how not to paint, and the how not to paint, they go, hand in hand. I also know how to fix any mistake I make because I made them all. I combined paints that never should have been, as a kid, I combined everything. To me, it didn't make sense not to. So I did it. And you figure out how to fix your mistakes, and you figure out what not to do.
Well, that's learning from failure. And that's
right.
That's the best way to learn.
Oh yeah.
But Dave knew how to paint based on me showing him, here's what you do. Mm-hmm. And so when things would go wrong, he would get stressed out. And I was like, dude, it's no big deal. All we got to do is do this. And just, I
over time, I think it became too much, and he didn't want to deal with the stress anymore. And I was like, man, if you're stressed, and then you should go. You shouldn't be here doing this. We're friends. It shouldn't be like that. If you're stressed, go, man. And of course, he's like, well, I don't want to put you in a bad financial spot. I'm like, man, I'm good. I started off doing this by myself. The plan is to end up doing it by myself. So, thanks for everything. And, so it's back to just me. And to be honest, I don't feel like I was a good boss. I definitely don't feel like I was a good manager of people. I mean, at one point it was me, my dad, both my sons, and Dave. And for me personally, that sucked. That just because it was nothing but questions, and they had questions, and there's nothing wrong with them having questions. Right. I just wanted to build guitars, and every time they had to ask me a question, I had to stop, and it was aggravating. It was like, well, why are you asking all these dumb questions? And they weren't dumb questions, but to me, when I'm trying to work, it's like you're stopping me from. It wasn't for me. For me. Lock the doors, turn up the music, turn off the phones, and let's make some dust. That's what I enjoy doing.
Yeah, and it's like, all those questions, I mean, they need to be asked, they need to be answered, but at the same time you're doing that, it's like, okay, I hired these, whoever this is, so I don't have to do that myself. If I'm constantly asking and showing and helping, I might as well be doing it myself.
Exactly.
I know what that's like, Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Well, it's like our good buddy Jason Schroeder and Sully, John Sullivan, they just kind of, it must be that zone. You guys must just get in that zone, and that's your world. Yeah. And it's like
don't pull me out of it.
Yeah,
man.
if you
don't
pull you out of it, you kind of lose that mojo. And there's a lot of people like that. I mean,
I mean, if you think about it, if you step back from it all and you think about, I mean, I've never liked, the term, luthier or boutique guitar builder or even being called artist. Because to me, it's just like, no, I'm just building a guitar. But any artist, whether it be somebody drawing, somebody making music, building a guitar, whatever. That's that stuff where it's like it sounds fruity to say, but that's coming from your soul. You're doing something you love, and you're putting your heart and soul in it. And now you're going to come and ask me a dumbass question like, "What are we getting for lunch?" I got my lunch. Go get whatever you want. I don't care. And again, it got to the point where it's just like, you know what, man? I mean, it's when it's just me, it is 7 days a week. Sometimes, 14, 15-hour days, but it could be a lot worse,
Yeah.
So it's the long, all those days where, everything seems to be going bad, or, those days do kind of suck, or just when you start to get wore down and you're tired, those days do kind of suck. But, my worst day at work is still, a lot better than, I mean, I've had to do other jobs. And that at least I get to build guitars and listen to music all day long. It's not really that bad.
There you go. That pretty much sums it up right there. I'd rather be, even though it's long and tiring, I'd rather be doing this than anything else.
Yeah,
and that's when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, I tell you what, as a very amateur builder, sorry about that, Jeff. I'll stop there a second. But as a very amateur builder myself, you are like a hero, man, because I used to look at your stuff and go, I don't even know how in the hell somebody can make a top do what you do. I mean, I've never seen quilt like I have on guitars like that. And nobody has ever done quilt or flame. Like, just search the internet. You cannot find it.
There's some guys out there who are doing some really, there's some guys out there doing some crazy stuff.
Yeah, but you were there. It's sort of like, I don't know, and I mean, I'll say it because it's like you're like the modern day Paul Reed Smith, and I know some guys are probably going to want to, whatever.
We just got into some real deep water now. Yeah. You can make people hate me.
But you know what I mean, though, because Paul was like the first guy that really did the flame and the quilt and that kind of thing. And then you came along, and I'm looking at these tops, and I'm going, that doesn't
like next level.
It doesn't even look like wood. It looks like water or a pillow, or it's the craziest looking stuff. And there's a lot of archive pictures that some of those some of those guitars that you've taken photos of, first off, just taking a photo of a guitar is a very difficult thing to kind of translate it to, your vision.
Yeah.
And some of them are like dead on.
What you see and what the camera sees
is two different things.
Still, there's a lot of times where I'm looking at the guitar and I'm looking in the, the lens of the camera, and I'm like, damn it, this thing's just not popping, So.
Yeah. And so it was interesting looking at your stuff, and I always would go, well, I'm not going to try that, because I don't know if I have the patience. Everything I did was just either it was either stained or it was painted solid, and that was the end of that. I never did any kind of fancy tops, nothing, because I was like, that's like a whole nother level, and I was nowhere near that, and I just didn't even want to try to go in that neighborhood. It was like, well, I'm going to bring this penknife to this giant gunfight.
Yeah.
so I'm just going to sit back here and I'm going to let that gunfight take place, right. And I'm just going to be this guy. So, but yeah, man, it was
and admire the other.
Yeah, and I will say the website, Jeff. It's McNaughtGuitars.com. And
actually, it's McNaughtCustomGuitars.com.
Oh, you changed it.
The old one is McNaughtGuitars.com.
Oh, now see, look at that. I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about.
I went with a new web designer, and he said, let's call it McNaught Custom Guitars. And I was like, well, why? He's like, because that's that way anytime anybody searches custom guitars, it's going to come up. And I'm like, and that's why you build websites and I build guitars.
Well,
that makes a lot of sense.
So I stand corrected. It's McNaughtCustomGuitars.com, and that will live on our website in
perpetuity.
Yeah, man. And you got to go out there and check it out because it'll make you sick. I mean, it's just unreal.
I appreciate that.
It's David. Before we go, anything we didn't touch on? New model that you want to tell people about, or anything upcoming?
And I think that's everything. I mean, the history, and then kind of teaching myself, and I think I think we hit on everything.
Excellent.
And we we'll probably be sued by Ed Roman's people, but. It's
probably.
Look, hey, I was really, I stayed with it. I followed a lot of that stuff, and he was like the information center. And I was really curious about your company, your guitars, because they were very refreshing, and you had some cool, just your ideas are just awesome. I mean, the way that you, that whole set neck thing was just, or set through was just crazy. And I was like, I was always just kind of like looking for that next bit of information. And, then he started poo-pooing your stuff. And I was like, what's going on there?
That, everything was, that I had, that we were farming stuff out, that we were using CNC equipment.
Yeah, it was a lot of that.
There's anything wrong with people using CNC equipment, but that's just not how, that's not how we.
Yeah, we forgot to mention that, Jeff. Everything is.
Yeah, we did.
Everything's hand.
Everything's handmade, pin router, not pin router even. You do it all by template and router, right? Hand router?
Template and router.
Yep.
And,
Yeah, and his neck joints are so strong and so tight in tolerance, he can slam the neck in the body and then hold the neck out, and the body does not fall off.
You've done your homework, man.
Oh, dude, I know all your stuff. It's kind of crazy, like a little obsessive, but that's what it is.
Stuff right there.
And I'm going to ask you this before we get off here, because a good friend of ours, an exceptional guitar builder, bass builder, more than guitar, but he does build guitars, is Kevin Brubaker.
Right.
And Kevin, he took, I don't think he took your idea, but what he did was he created a bolt-on neck that the tenon goes down almost all the way to the bridge.
Yep.
And he has to do a different technique than you, because his guitars, the top is applied to the back, and then he has to then take the because you're thinner at the nut and wider at the heel, but when he gets to the heel, he then has to go parallel.
Right.
So that neck does not keep going in a outward. I don't even know what the hell would that be. Yeah, it's not on an angle anymore. It's now straight, because he has
to be able to take it in and out.
Yeah, exactly. So he has to shove it in. And it actually is like suction. We got to hear it when we took the tour of his shop. When he pulls it out, it makes like a sound to it.
There's a sucking sound, actually.
Yes, it's kind of crazy. And the tolerances are really tight. But when I saw that, I was like, that's just like, that's like that set through that Dave McNaught does. And I was like, but it's not, because yours is permanently set. And
it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. And then the top, you actually, and see, this is where I get obsessive, Jeff. So what happens is you make the back and you make the top with the back, but the back and the top are not applied to each other, because then you put the neck in, and then because of the neck, the way that it travels, it actually gets thicker as it goes from front to back, right, after you set it in. So you then have to plane that level.
Yep,
and then apply the top.
And
on.
then put the top on.
Then you've got to fit the top, because the top and the body have already been, sanded together. But now you have to fit the top around, the neck, and then
carve it, right?
Yeah. That's the part that's the part that can drive you crazy some days. But just count your sanding strokes and check it, and sand some more and check it and sand some more, and
Yeah. So when you see the price tags on these things, and they're not crazy, right? I mean, for what
they're really not.
For what you're getting, it is pretty damn insane for a price.
There are people who seem to be offended.
Really?
by There's
they just don't understand how much work goes into it. Because
there's other people who they're like, really? That's all? And at that point, I'm like, gosh, I need to charge more. So there's trying to find the right price.
You're obviously right in the middle.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
Right in the middle.
Well,
so
on his website, the Phoenix Rising goes for a base price of $3,600. I'm correct with that, right?
Yeah, and that's no options. That's going to get you an all mahogany guitar.
Okay.
As soon as you start adding options, it's going to
it goes up accordingly.
Yeah.
For 36, that's a lot of handwork.
Okay,
man.
so let's just put this in perspective. Okay, now that's a $6,000 guitar all day long, just because of that building technique alone. First off, you're not buying neck blanks that everybody else can buy. You have to get your blanks at least 18 inches longer. So you're using like something for a base, but it's not that thick.
Right.
And so you see how crazy this is, Jeff?
Yeah.
He's using something that's 42 inches long, right? And then he's got to shave it down.
You have actually done your homework quite well. It actually is. It is 42 inches long. That's actually scary.
Just open up your latest GC flyer and look at not a studio or anything, but just look at a good new Les Paul. You're going to pay $1,000 more for that than you're going to pay for
absolutely.
But I understand with that too. They're actually when somebody buys a Les Paul, you're buying history. So, even though I'll get customers who will say things like, it's ridiculous they charge that much. Why would anyone pay that much when they could get one of yours? It's like, well, with mine, you're not, Jimmy Page didn't play mine, back in the 70s. You know what I mean? So I understand.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I understand that. And I respect that.
You have a Mercedes. You know what I mean? Under the hood, it's more
just
pristine than on the outside.
Drive a Mercedes doesn't make the Mercedes any less valuable.
Exactly.
Might not make it more valuable, but it's make it less valuable.
And how Mercedes or any of those high end cars are made. It's the stuff under the hood that you don't see that has just as much detail as it does on the outside. So that's what you're getting. You're getting that piece, which a major manufacturer cannot do that. Those guitars would cost you $12,000.
Yeah, it's just not not cost effective to for a bigger company to do it that way.
Yeah. So then you got to go over to Dave's site and get the real deal.
That's right. So all of our listeners go over to Dave's site, check it out, and we're going to let him go back to sanding.
Yeah,
all this time he has not been making money.
Up and if I got time, try to shoot a video.
Well, there you go. Got to do, man. Dave, thank you so very much for your time, and much continued success, my friend.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Hey, thank you, Dave.
All right, talk to you later.
Have a great one. See you.
Bye.
And there you have the story.
I got
I started building guitars at 10 years old.
Yeah, that's crazy. I read this story already. I know most of the history on that, but I needed our listeners to hear it. Now, here's the thing, and I want Dave to hear this if he listens to the show. I'm not a stalker. I swear to God. I just, you know what it was? It was just, I was obsessed with what this guy could do. I was,
right.
He kind of like is a Ken Parker. Ken Parker reinvented the guitar. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm trying to get Ken Parker on the show because Ken Parker did something that nobody had done in 50 years, okay? And he literally went back in and said, okay, how do we do this? And we're going to do this with woods that have never been used because they would just shatter under the stress, right? So when I saw Dave, I was like, this guy did something that nobody has ever done. See, there's neck-through guitars, but to take a set neck and set it down past the bridge like that, it's just too much labor for any major manufacturer to do. That's
a different assembly procedure than I had heard of or have known of before.
Yeah, and the only guy doing it close would be Kevin.
Right, and that is completely different. It's very similar, but completely different.
Kevin uses a bolt-in design. He does not do a set version of that.
Right.
So even though it does this kind of the same thing, the tone properties that happen between those two guitars, I guarantee you, would sound like night and day. Kevin's guitars sound incredible, so do Dave's, but the tonality of how those two react have to be completely different. I'm sure that Kevin's are probably a little bit brighter than Dave's because set necks have that thing of being a little bit darker than bolt-on.
Yeah,
because,
but his is so far in there that it's almost a set neck. It's just officially not a set neck because there's a bolt involved.
Exactly,
but
bolts. But it's something with that glue that creates that little bit of darkness, right? That's why. I'm sure your difference between Strats and Les Pauls come in.
I'm sure with the other ones, and this is not Kevin's show, but I'm sure with the other ones, you throw some glue in that socket, pop that neck in there, you probably don't ever need the bolts anyway.
You'd probably have almost the same identical guitars.
Yeah, but it's still, the construction is still different.
Very much different. Yeah, because of the way, Dave puts his top on after the neck's in there. So it's a very unique thing between both of them. They are kind of like in their own world.
Yeah.
Nobody else is really doing that. And the reason that they don't is because of the amount of labor that is involved.
Right. You can't do that on a large scale.
There's no way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you have to have somebody, every person that put one of those guitars together on a large scale would have to be, a luthier or a builder to the caliber of Dave or Kevin, and it's impossible. Yeah. It's impossible.
10 years old and he's doing the show by himself. I mean, that is amazing.
Yeah.
And look, go out to his website, man. Your mind will be blown. If you've never seen this guy before, you're going to see some pictures of inlays and just detail in binding that you just have never seen.
That's cool.
These are crazy. This is up there with the Jason Schroeders, man. I mean, that whole Builders Guild thing. I mean, our good buddy Joel Danzig, he's got his whole line now going, and my God, I see the Instagram pictures of those things, and it's just like Dave's stuff. I mean, it's like, he takes his time building a guitar.
Yeah, these are significantly different from what I can discern than pretty much just about anything else out there in construction.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, man.
Yeah. There you go. Well, if that makes a big difference to you, you got to go check them out.
See, I geek out on this. This is like, I get all giddy and I'm like asking crazy questions. But look, man, I needed to share this. I knew I was like, God, this is one guy. I wanted to get on the show, man.
Well, there you go.
Look at that. It's a good day, man.
It is.
How about that, hell? So until next time, my friend.
That's right. When Mick will be geeking on something else.
I'm fanboying my ass off.
There you go.
I'm Mick Marcelino.
That's right. And I'm still just Jeff Bober.
And we're always saying,
onward.
Be sure and follow the show on Twitter at Amps and Axes. Also, make sure you like the show on Facebook. For news, comments, and everything else, visit the webpage, ampsandaxescast.com. Thanks for listening.